And so this is Ramadan, the month of jihad, and dumb Western leaders tell us it's from God. Yet as the body count rises higher, we know it's not true. Ramadan is for gorging, it's not for me and you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was the very first Jihad Watch This Week in Jihad song, but also a poem. I challenge anybody to write a song like it, and nobody will be able to. David Wood is here with us, and that's something new. David, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, Robert?
Whoops, never better. Never better. You've gotten taller all of a sudden. There you are. Okay.
Yeah, I was on a different stream, so had to adjust appropriately.
Yes, of course. Okay. We got a lot of Ramadan jihad, but first we got so many Ramadan stupid infidels. I can't believe how many we've got. This gentleman right here is Cardinal Dolan, the Cardinal Archbishop, Roman Catholic Archbishop of New York.
Yeah, he's been around for a while, hasn't he?
I think so. One of the most important clerics for the Roman Catholic Church in the United States, the Cardinal Archbishop of New York. And if anybody...
you know that his wisdom will be unparalleled and unmatched. Be given such an important task.
That's right. And so Cardinal Dolan posted on Friday, Ramadan starts tomorrow. Ramadan is the season of penance for Yeah.
Penance?
Penance.
Where's that?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. But it gets worse. Wait, it gets worse. Ramadan is the season of penance for our Islamic brothers and sisters. Do they ever take it seriously? I tell you that because Ash Wednesday is coming up. It's actually today, as far as I know. That's kind of like our Ramadan. So, David, first off, is it a season of penance?
No, that's news to me.
Indeed. Ramadan is not a penitential season. Ramadan is a time to redouble your efforts to please Allah. Now, what is the deed that is greater than all other deeds according to Muhammad?
I'll go with jihad for 200, Alex.
That's right. You win. So, if the deed that is greater than all other deeds is jihad, then we see more jihad during Ramadan, do we not?
That has been the pattern. In fact, I mean, I have to say it's significantly better than when you had a caliphate ordering people to go out and slaughter people. Because back then we were calling it the Ramadan bombathon. Because as soon as Ramadan started, all these bombings started. And it would be not just bombings of churches, it's like bombings of mosques from the wrong sect of Islam. And so things are actually better than they were during the heyday of ISIS. You still have lots of Muslims in the world who believe that in order to go out and launch that kind of jihad, that you need a caliph ordering you to. So some are just kind of waiting. We have to wait until a caliph orders us to do this, but they would entirely be willing to do it. But you do still have people who understand that your good deeds are multiplied if they're done during the month of Ramadan. So if you're going to wage jihad, go on a stabbing spree or something like that, ram a car, whatever you're going to do, bomb something, then this is the month to do it. And yet every time it happens, we're told, oh, they can't be real Muslims because they're attacking during this month of penance. And what?
Yeah. In Nigeria the other day, 25 Muslims were arrested for eating and selling food during fasting hours of Ramadan. And so I brought that up because of the other thing that Dolan said, that, man, do they ever take it seriously? Now, what happens if they don't take it seriously?
They get punished.
And we just saw this in Nigeria. So, not only that, but Dolan also said Ash Wednesday is coming up. He didn't say Lent is coming up, but Lent is upon us for Christians who are observant, and he said, that's kind of like our Ramadan. What is wrong with that statement, David?
Do people just spend all day gorging themselves with food and eat way more? We eat way more than they usually do during Lent. Is that what Lent
Nope,
is?
that's not how Lent works.
Huh. Well, that's how Ramadan works, Robert. Study after study has shown that Muslims consume significantly more calories during Ramadan than they do any other month of the year. Food sales go through the roof. They basically kind of just reverse their ordinary eating schedule. So ordinarily, and this is what's amazing. Most human beings down through history, your last meal of the day is dinner. Let's say that's at 6 o'clock, and then you go to sleep later, 9 o'clock or something like that, and then you wake up and you have breakfast. Let's suppose it's 6 or 7 a.m. What does that mean? It means you just went 12 hours without food. In Islam, they just reverse it and they say, okay, so we'll eat at night and then we'll eat all night and then we'll eat some more and then we'll sleep all day and we'll keep this up for an entire month. So all you've done is just flip the regular eating schedule. But for some reason, since they're eating when they're not normally eating, they're like used to eating during the day, but now they're not eating during the day. So they just gorge themselves with food as soon as it's evening. And I tell people in the West, it's like, imagine, we have a big Thanksgiving meal. Imagine having a big Thanksgiving meal twice a day for an entire month. That's what they do. And guess what? I wouldn't really care. I might say, hey, that might not be good for your health to eat like that. We know all sorts of health problems that arise. There have been tons of studies, tons of doctors and researchers have been warning about the problems with Ramadan fasting. And keep in mind, it's not a problem with fasting. It's a problem with Ramadan fasting, which is actually a kind of feasting. But apart from pointing out things like that, hey, the way you're going about it is not healthy. There are healthier ways to go about these things. Apart from that, I wouldn't care if they called it the Feast of Ramadan and said, hey, we have a month-long feast. Wouldn't have any problem with it. But the problem is, one, they stuff themselves with more food than they normally eat. So much so that they end up gaining massive amounts of weight during Ramadan, and they end up with all sorts of health problems. And somehow they call it fasting the entire time. So that's one issue. But the other issue is, it's you're bragging about doing something that you're not actually doing. It's hey everyone, I'm fasting. Look at me, I'm fasting. Look at what a righteous person I am. So you're bragging about doing something that you didn't actually do. And then, of course, the final issue is connected to that. These are people who claim to believe in Jesus, and Jesus warned about doing your fasting to be seen by others. And that, keep in mind, Jesus is talking about people who are actually fasting, but they want people to know they're fasting. Look at me, look how holy and devout I am. In Islam, it's worse. You're not even doing the fasting. You're faking the fasting and still want credit for the fasting as if you're some great and noble person. This would be one thing if they said, Jesus, who's he? We don't care what he says. They claim to follow Jesus. This is a massively dysfunctional religion, Robert.
That's for sure, David. And just so we're clear, Ramadan, indeed, as you have said, is not fasting. You want to know what fasting really is? Well, look at the Orthodox Christian tradition, which calls for the believers to abstain from meat, dairy, fish, eggs, everything of that kind from cheese fare Sunday, which is actually the Sunday before Lent begins, all the way through Lent. And so that's a real. It's no gorging at night. It's eating before noon. And very sparing eating, and that after that with a very limited diet, and that's fasting. This is not Ramadan is not fasting, and that's one of the other offensive things about what Cardinal Dolan says. That he says that's kind of like our Ramadan. Lent is not Christian Ramadan. Ramadan is Muslim Lent. Which came first? The apostolic constitutions in the 4th century actually established the Lenten fast, and it's clear that it comes from before that. And so for Dolan to say this is like our Ramadan as if we got it from them is to reverse the historical order and to place the Christians in a subordinate position to the Muslims as if, oh, we have so much to learn from them about how observant they are, when it's actually the observance of fear and not of devoutness. And it's not a real fast, and it did not come first. And so everything he says essentially was wrong.
Yeah, and it's just the apart from him just being wrong about everything having to do with Ramadan, it's this. Again, from a Christian perspective, you're not supposed to be doing things just for show. In Islam, everything is for show. The prayers are for show. That's why even if they have mosques, they want to go out and block streets and so on. It's hey, look at us, look at us, look at us. Oh, they'll actually bang their heads on the floor while praying to get a big zabiba. What's the point of the zabiba? Look at me, look how holy and devout I am. Everything is for show. Everything is look at me, look at me, look at me. If you took everything Jesus said about what you're supposed to do, and you did the exact opposite, it would be Islam. Islam is just the exact opposite of how Jesus said to do everything, and they claim to follow and respect Jesus. So that's all an issue. But then when your leaders praise Islam for exactly for that, instead of exposing the hypocrisy of Jesus, what did Jesus do? He exposed hypocrisy wherever he went. Hey, if you were saying one thing and doing the opposite, or if you're doing things to get attention for yourself, he came guns blazing. I mean, he came to expose you. And here you've got an entire 2 billion strong Muslim community, all doing the exact opposite of what Jesus said. And what do? We're going to praise them for being so devout in being hypocrites.
Yep. And oh man, there is so much craziness this week, David. And well, let's go over to the UK where it's major crazy. And this was right before the beginning of Ramadan. You probably saw it. This is old King Charles and Queen Camilla, and they are packing dates.
Defender of the faith.
Yep, defender of the faith, packing dates for Ramadan. It was not recorded as far as I know. Perhaps some of our English viewers can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that he showed up at any Lenten observance or preparation or service of any kind. But he was ready to pack dates for Ramadan. Not only did he do that, but let's see here. We had a Ramadan iftar, the meal breaking the fast, the big meal that David was just talking about, that comes at sundown at Windsor Castle.
Yay!
And Windsor Castle is not just your average castle, because if you go over to Britain, you know, there's castles everywhere, all over the place. But Windsor Castle is a supreme symbol of the British monarchy and of its specifically Christian character. And that was where they opened it up. You can see the Muezzin right here, and they are breaking the Ramadan fast there in Windsor Castle. And so my question to you, David, is when do you think they're going to have the Lenten dinner at a local mosque in London?
Well, never. They're not trying to submit to Christianity. They're trying to submit to Islam. And what better way to do that than doing things right there?
Indeed. And so it only goes one way. The British authorities, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and King Charles, they would say certainly that they're just trying to make the Muslims feel welcome and at home in Britain, but it all goes one way. There's never any expectation that the Muslims will reach out, try to make the non-Muslims feel comfortable with their presence, with the jihad, etc., etc., etc. Meanwhile, in London, if you go there, which neither of us is going to be doing anytime soon, you see these signs all over the place that say, trust in Allah, give zakat.
Nice.
And that's just, you walk down the street of any major city and there might be signs for a local festival or Christmas decorations. But right now, London is all decked out for Ramadan. And you are exhorted to give zakat for Ramadan.
Month of fake fasting.
Yep. Meanwhile, we had also in the UK, which is a never-ending source, of course, for stupid infidels, we had the House of Commons Women and Equalities Committee. And the House of Commons Women and Equalities Committee, they just said today, David, that pictures of a Muslim woman without a hijab could be considered non-consensual intimate images and be treated as if they were like revenge porn and criminally prosecuted. As if that weren't enough, they also just today, excuse me, introduced legislation to say that the crimes would be judged based on the ethnicity of the perpetrator, and Muslims and visible minorities would not be punished as harshly if they commit the same crime as a native British citizen.
Yeah, there's been a clip circulating of someone there responding to that, saying you're basically destroying rule of law. You're saying the fundamental principle has been equality, and now we're saying nope, we've got different groups of people, and therefore we will judge them differently according to which group they're in.
Yeah, the English actually made that up. They made up the idea of the equality of rights of all people before the law. They were the ones who, for the first to do away with the idea that there was one law for the nobles and one law for the commoners and so on. And now they're the first to throw that out and go back to the old way. But now the people with the privilege are the Muslims.
And that's weird because that's exactly what Islam teaches.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Isn't it amazing? Islam says, hey, we get this privileged status, and then Muslims go to different countries, and at first they're like, no, everyone's equal here, and then over time they eventually give the Muslims exactly what they want and make them give them a superior status.
Yep. And here's one of the recipients of it. This is Hasnain Shahzad, who sexually abused a 14-year-old girl in London, and he has been sentenced to a suspended sentence of several months in prison, but he won't actually spend even a minute in prison because it was all suspended. And 6 months for both offenses. So 12. You're supposed to spend a year in prison, which isn't much to start with, but it was all suspended. He has to carry out 120 hours of community service.
Mm-hmm. Probably at the local girls' club.
Yeah. So that's we see two-tier Kier at it again, and so that is Ramadan in London. But it's really not that different here. This is the NYPD, the New York Police Department, holding their first ever crescent lighting ceremony to mark the beginning of...
Maybe we should start a Quran lighting ceremony to go along with this.
That's a great idea. They would
Quran
love that.
lighting ceremony.
I'm sure the NYPD would be thrilled by that. But tell us, really, for those of us who may not know, what is the big deal? Aren't they just trying to be nice?
Yeah, I guess they have good intentions and so on, but really it just seems like, hey, if we grovel enough, maybe they won't want to kill us.
Yeah, there
and
you
it never
go.
works. And it never works. The more you grovel in response to terror, the more you encourage them to commit acts of terror, because they're like, oh, these people, the more we attack them, the more they promote and defend our religion to show how tolerant they are. So it's in our best interest to keep attacking with endless bloodshed, because the more we do, the more they promote our religion.
Also, celebrating Ramadan might not be so wise for non-Muslims. Al-Qaeda has issued an interesting communique just this week. A 4-page statement in Arabic and English. Congratulations to all Muslims on the occasion of the advent of the blessed month of Ramadan. And it says Ramadan is the month of Jihad and calls upon Muslims to carry out attacks, saying that it is the month of victory. So when the New York City Police Department is celebrating Ramadan. It's celebrating something that some Muslims see as a pretext to carry out more attacks against non-Muslims. And speaking of which, we got this wonderful comment here. Robert Spencer, you are Carides. Carides, David. You will regret target our Relgion. We will show you. Don't you ever dare target Relgion of 2 billion people. I'm warning you.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
We apologize for being Cowredes.
He keeps doing this too. It's just every other comment here. I guess I got to ban the guy, but I don't know. It's kind of entertaining. Maybe I'll keep him there. It's okay, Bukhari. You can stay. Okay. Interesting incident here. I don't know if you know Pierre Rehov, the documentary filmmaker. He's made a number of excellent documentaries, particularly about the jihad against Israel. I highly recommend them to anyone you can find, many of them, if not all of them, on YouTube. Every one of them is good. And so check him out, Pierre Rehov, R-E-H-O-V. And very interesting thing that he posted on X the other day. He says, many years ago, I asked a very logical question to a young female terrorist I was interrogating in an Israeli prison. I first asked her if she believed in God. Of course, she replied. Did she believe that God had created everything that lived on earth? Of course. In that case, I asked her, why would God ask you to kill the Jews when he had created them? And Pierre says, I expected a hesitation, a moment of confusion. Not at all. Her answer was chilling. She says, God created snakes and scorpions also, all poisonous insects to test us. In the same way, he created the Jews to make sure that we would obey his word by eliminating them all, down to the last one. And that's her in the picture. Lovely individual, no?
Mm-hmm.
But is she, surely what she's saying is not Islamic, right?
I don't know. Kind of sounds like it's right on the money.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I think that's pure Islam. Kill them wherever you find them, and so on and so on. 489, 491, 2191, 995. Excuse me. Anyway, here's an interesting story, David. Getting into more jihad rather than just stupid infidels. This guy, I think he's dressed. He looks kind of like, I don't know, the Sphinx or Pharaoh or something with that headdress. I haven't
and
really
that eye makeup.
haven't really seen that before, at least aside from statues. But this was Hamid al-Haq Haqqani of the so-called Haqqani network, who was the leader of Jamiat Ulema Islam, a jihad group in Pakistan that was a supporter of the Taliban. And just the other day, there was a jihad suicide attack at Dar ul Uloom Haqqaniya in Pakistan. Dar ul Uloom Haqqaniya is a university that has been called, the BBC actually called it, of all people, the University of Jihad, because it has turned out so many terrorists. And so Hamid al-Haq Haqqani was there at the school when the suicide attack occurred, and he was killed in it. Now, what's ironic about that is that he repeatedly supported Taliban jihad suicide attacks in Afghanistan and justified jihad suicide attacks in a vocal and persistent manner. And so he ultimately was killed in one. As the Lord says, he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. And there you go. Hamid al-Haq Haqqani. But surely suicide attacks have nothing to do with Islam, right?
Surely not. Just another strange misunderstanding of Islam that so many people across the Muslim world happen to misunderstand in exactly the same way.
Indeed. And so, so much for Haqqani. Meanwhile, we had right in New York City. Where is this clown here? Let's see. Um, I actually have a more efficient way to get the photos, and you see I'm not fumbling so much with the photos this week. Onward and upward, technological progress is being made at a rapid clip, ladies and gentlemen. And this fellow here is Manu Manuchekri. Mansuri Manuchekri, a truck driver in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, who in his spare time he sent $70,000 to ISIS, the Islamic State. But he said he was just going to care for the widows and the orphans.
That's nice.
And so how could they not be in favor of that? The problem is he had stuff like these photos of himself with AK-47s, and this led the cops to think maybe he would be prepared to take violent action of his own in furtherance of ISIS's goals.
Or he's holding these guns up to auction them to give the money to the poor.
That must be it, because he knows that Islam is a religion of peace and Ramadan is a time of penance, and so he wants to get rid of the weapons of war. He should have just beat them into plowshares. Now, I got a strange story here out of Chicago, since we're talking about jihad in the United States. Out of Chicago, in Chicago, this Navy guy, he pleaded guilty this week to a terrorist plot in 2022 to attack the naval station Great Lakes, which is in Chicago's northern suburbs. Now, David, the funny thing about this is that he wanted to do it, he said, in order to avenge the death of Qasem Soleimani, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps commander who was killed in an American strike a few years back. And so you would think, okay, this guy's got to be an Iranian. He's got to be a Muslim. But his name is actually Xuan Yu Harry Pang. Xuan Yu Harry Pang. I know I pronounced the Harry part right, and I'm pretty sure I got the Pang part right. I'm not sure about Xuan Yu. That's Xuanyu. Then he's a Chinese native who became a naturalized U.S. citizen. And Xuan Yu Harry Pang was going to blow up the naval station in Chicago to avenge the death of Soleimani. So the problem is, with so many of these news stories, you got to read the tea leaves. Probably this guy was a convert to Islam, but nothing says that.
Yes. Yeah.
He also could be a leftist who hates America so much that he thinks he wants to strike out in favor of America's enemies. But anyway, he was caught, wasn't able to go ahead with it. Old Xuan Yu Harry Pang is now having pangs of regret.
And if they find out that he was a convert to Islam and decided to wage jihad, I'm sure they'll come up with some heart-wrenching story about how he wanted to be a kung fu instructor but was turned down because he wasn't good at kung fu, and then he was traumatized by failing at his dream, and so he lashed out, but not in any way influenced by Islam at all.
That must be it. You hit the nail directly on the head. All right, since we're doing jihad in the U.S., this guy, you can tell he's from Minnesota, and his name is Abdi Sattar Ahmed Hassan. And he was born in Kenya and lived in Texas before moving to Minnesota in 2023, expressed admiration for the truck jihad attack that killed 14 people in New Orleans not too long ago. And he was going to try to go to Somalia to join up with the jihadis. But in the meantime, he was driving around Minneapolis with an ISIS flag on his truck. And so that actually raised... You would think nobody would really notice that in Minneapolis these days, but...
Yeah, it'd be totally normal. You think, hey, is that Ilhan Omar?
So he's now up on charges of providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization. He also posted videos of himself with a knife in his lap. Looked like he was clearly going to go jihad somehow, some way. Meanwhile, this is a good one, going back to our friend Cardinal Dolan and all that nonsense. We have this chappie here is the Pakistani Islamic scholar Qazi Fazlullah. And he is now in California, because where else would he be? Mm-hmm. And he was preaching a sermon at Al-Islam Masjid in Chatsworth, California. And he is talking about the Jews of all people. And he says, the Jews have enmity with you people. They have enmity with you people. They have jealousy as well. The enmity part, of course, comes straight out of the Quran. That chapter 5, verse 82, the strongest in enmity toward the believers are the Jews. But then he goes on, he says, the Quran says, O believers, do not take the Jews and the Christians as allies. Make them not protectors or friends, secret keepers, depending upon them or trusting them. They are allies of one another. They are friends and protectors of one another. So one another, this friendship of theirs with one another is not because of their love for one another. It's based upon enmity with the Muslims. Now, Derek, no, not Derek. David, that's right. There was somebody just said Derek in the chat. And so I saw it really quickly and changed your name.
We all get old. We all get old and forget names, Robert.
We are getting so old so fast. It's incredible. But in any case, David, the question that I have about this is, I've heard many Islamic apologists tell me that 551 does not actually mean don't take Jews and Christians as friends. And yet here's this Qazi Fazlullah right there in Chatsworth, Cali, saying don't take Jews and Christians as friends. Surely he's getting the Quran all. He's misunderstanding the Quran, is he not?
Yeah. So it says, do not take the Jews and Christians as awliya, which is broader than our meaning. And that's why you'll get different translations like friends, allies, protectors, things like that. And so what you'll frequently get is, oh, this isn't saying don't take Jews and Christians as friends. It's saying don't take them as protectors. And it's like, okay, like what? Like police, doctors, politicians? Because now you're already sounding like you want a society where Muslims control everything. Or if you say as allies or something like that, what do you mean? What do you mean? You guys can't be on the same team. You guys can't be in the same military. What are you saying here? In other words, no matter what they go with, it doesn't look good. You end up with something very, very dangerous. As far as awliya, you've got the Quran, which refers to the awliya of Allah. And so it doesn't make sense there to translate that as like protectors or something like that. Like Allah has bodyguards who protect him or something like that. That normally gets translated as just the friends of Allah. So yeah, you have Surah 5 verse 51, problematic passage. Don't take the Jews and Christians as awliya, as friends, as allies, or anything else. If you do, you're actually one of them. That's a threat to Muslims. Hey, if you disobey this and you say, no, but I really like my Christian friend, then you're actually a Christian. You're no longer a Muslim. You're an apostate. But of course, you do have the exception, Robert, in Surah 3, verse 28, which is that don't take the disbelievers as friends unless it's to guard yourselves against them. And there, it doesn't mean they're attacking you. It just means if you are openly hostile to them and you're open about your intentions of subjugating them, they're going to be against you. If you're in the minority, that's not good. And therefore, in those situations where you can't actually subjugate them, pretend to be friendly. You can pretend to be friendly to the Jews and Christians while you basically prepare long-term to conquer them.
Isn't that lovely? Isn't that a wonderful sentiment?
It's beautiful religion.
It is. It's very inspiring. And this is more inspiration. This is an interesting situation. This is Brahim Ayusawi. I'm probably saying that wrong, but Brahim is just going to have to deal with it. Brahim, if
That's
you don't like
that's a
how I
cool
say
nickname.
it.
What's up, Brahim?
Brahim. Yeah, not Ibrahim, but just Brahim. Anyway, Brahim Ayouisawi is the guy who murdered 3 people in a church in France some time ago, beheading one of them. And he's on trial now. This was in the Notre Dame Basilica in Nice in 2020. And Brahim, he went into the church. He stabbed 3 people to death, beheaded one. And he said in his trial this past week, yes, I admit the facts. But he went on to say, and get this, David, I am not a terrorist. I am a Muslim. And then, as he's going on, he says he beheaded the lady that he beheaded in order to scare the other people in the church. So he said, I'm not a terrorist, I'm a Muslim. And he says he did what he did because of Islam, but yet he did it to scare them. Well, what is terror?
Yeah, that's literally the definition of terror. Violence against people for the sake of your message. That's literally the definition of terror. He's acting like there's a conflict between these two things. I mean, Muhammad himself said, I've been made victorious with terror. Muhammad didn't say, what? Terror? No, I'm just a Muslim. Why? He understands terrorism is a tool used in Islam to help establish Islam. Just as all other tools are concerned, other people can use the exact same tool, but it is and always has been part of Islam. So we'd have to say to our friend Brahim, hey, Brahim, yes, you are a terrorist and you're a Muslim. You're both simultaneously, and one of those is a tool of the other.
Indeed. And when he says he did it to scare people, well, that's basically saying he is a terrorist. I'm not a terrorist, but I'm a terrorist. Also in France, always fertile ground for jihad, a 52-year-old migrant from Morocco has been indicted on suspicion of raping a 4-year-old girl in a ski resort in the Pyrenees. Now, why would I be bringing that up? That must just be plain Islamophobia, right? That has nothing to do with Islam, am I right?
I don't know. I mean, Daniel Hikikachu was specifically asked about sex with little girls and was even asked about 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and so on.
And what did he say?
He concluded they're all halal.
So this Muslim who raped a 4-year-old girl in France, you're telling me that he is acting in accord with Islamic norms?
It would be a different situation with what we're familiar with in the Muslim sources, because you obviously can conquer people and take their wives and daughters as your sex slaves. So we know that you could take sex slaves. We know that they don't have age restrictions. Surah 85 verse 4 specifically talks about sex with prepubescent girls.
65:4.
Oh yeah, 65:4. Surah 65 verse 4 specifically refers to sex, marrying, having sex with, and divorcing, and then passing on to the next guy, girls, all before they've ever reached the age of puberty. So this is a different situation as far as just not having officially conquered a nation, but just going up and taking a girl for yourself. It's a new situation, but that's because European nations have put them in a different situation. They put them in a situation where they don't have to actually conquer the nation. They'll just keep handing over their girls.
And we got more of it.
So they keep taking them.
More of it out of Britain, as if they needed more in Britain. Shaha Alman Mia, his brother, and their other brother, Shaha Joman Mia, were convicted of 60 offenses against 5 girls, ranging in age from 6 to 15. Shaha Amran Mia, Shaha Alman Mia, and Shaha Joman Mia. Now, you have remarked on this before, and I think it's worth repeating. Wouldn't these guys, they're brothers, wouldn't they be ashamed of doing this in conjunction with members of their family?
Yeah, that's the weird thing. These things always seem to be a family affair. If you look at the lists of the grooming gangs and so on, it's like multiple brothers, cousins, sometimes fathers and sons, uncles and nephews, and so on. And they're getting their whole families together, the men at least, to rape and gang rape young girls and so on. And that means that it's just acceptable, right? That it's not. You can always have a rapist who has to hide his crimes and so on because he knows he'll be condemned and arrested and so on. But yeah, so I mean, I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional, crime-oriented family. But I know if I were to call up my brothers at some point and say, "Hey, I got this 12-year-old girl over here," they're going to assume I'm joking or something like that. If they find out I'm serious, someone's getting knocked out. Someone's getting knocked out over that stuff. In the Pakistani community and so on, totally fine. Totally fine. It's a family affair. Right.
Yep.
The family that prays together and fasts for Ramadan together can rape together.
After all, it's allowed. It's something that Allah is saying is okay, is good. So how could it be bad? What do they have to be ashamed of?
Mhm.
All right. Meanwhile, our friends in Germany, I put up last week, I believe it was, we discussed that there were threats from jihad groups against carnival celebrations. And so sure enough, in several German cities, carnival celebrations were canceled and did not take place this year. Sometimes traditions going back 500 years in Germany ended this year for fear of jihad attacks. And so you're talking about the transformation of European society before our eyes.
And it's weird. Europeans have to cancel all these things because they're worried about jihad attacks, but simultaneously they're all celebrating Ramadan.
Indeed.
Like everything is Ramadan, Ramadan, yay, yay, Ramadan, 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 yay. Let's all pretend to fast.
Yeah, it's crazy. Justin Trudeau, Starmer in Britain, Macron. I saw many of the European leaders in Canada, they sending out Ramadan greetings, best wishes for Ramadan. No indication whatsoever that Ramadan is the month of jihad. Meanwhile, totally different subject. In Israel, a study has been released. The IDF presented its top-level investigations into what went wrong on October 7th and why they let their guard down so severely to allow 1,200 Israelis to be murdered by Hamas jihadis on that day. And it turns out they were misreading Hamas and taking for granted that they were not interested in jihad. They were pragmatists who were not seeking an escalation. Now, why was this? Obviously, in hindsight, it's easy to say that was a big mistake. But David, is there any way they could have seen this coming?
I don't know. Look at anything Hamas has ever declared about their intentions and so on at any point, ever.
And also, war is deceit, that
Mhm.
Muhammad said. Problem is, of course, that in Israel, just as much as in the United States and as in Western Europe, nobody takes jihad or Islam seriously as a factor. And so we have the very strange situation of jihadis constantly, Palestinian leaders constantly saying, this is all about Islam, quoting the Quran, explaining what they're doing, why they want to destroy Israel, exclusively in Islamic terms. And then, on the other side, not a peep about Islam. And nobody ever considers it as having anything to do with this conflict.
Hey, it's not like the jihadis aren't trying to make their message clear.
No,
They try.
they're being
Refuse to listen.
completely clear.
Yeah, they're crystal clear. They've been crystal clear for a long time.
Yes, indeed.
It's gotta kind of be frustrating, isn't it? Here's why I'm doing this. Come on, that's not why you're doing it. No, I'm serious. It's exactly why I'm doing this. Oh, come on, you're just mad at climate change. I don't care about stupid climate change. I'm trying to subjugate you in the name of Allah. No, you're not. Come on.
That would be a good skit.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, on the other side, we do have a sort of a positive development, semi-positive development, and that comes from Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence, who has said this past week, this is what she said: "We look at the past 4 years of open borders, where we had tens of millions of people coming across our borders, many of whom we don't know who they are or what their intentions are. Very specifically, the threat of radical Islamist terrorism here within our country is higher than it's ever before, not only because of Biden's open borders, but because of his and his administration's fear of being called Islamophobes." Now, that's one thing, but I just wanted to note that also Biden said, for example, in June 2021, "As I said in my address to the joint session of Congress, according to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists." And the former Attorney General Merrick Garland, the former FBI head Christopher Wray, they both said the same thing as well. And so Tulsi Gabbard has actually broken with the consensus of the intelligence community, at least up until the change in administration, that white supremacists were the biggest terror threat. Now, meanwhile, she said it was radical Islamist terrorism that presents a big problem. What's wrong with that?
Well, that it's radical Islamist terrorism.
What is it
They-
really?
What Islam teaches, and
Which
that it's
ain't
always
radical.
a problem. Yeah, so people always treat it as like there's Islam and then there's this radical offshoot of it. No, there's Islam, and then there is a watered down version of it that doesn't have anything to do with subjugating unbelievers and so on. But that's you're kind of reverse. They're reversing everything. They're acting like it's Islam, and that's like that maybe this fine nice thing. But then there's some radical weird version of it, some weird offshoot, like some weird cult out of Islam, and we got to be concerned about that. No, what you're talking about is actual Islam, but there's a watered down mutant offshoot of it that is, you've got people that follow it and don't want to subjugate people and so on. So it's you do want to draw a distinction between people who want to slaughter you in the name of Allah and people who just want to live normal lives. So you do need some sort of distinction among Muslims. And so it's just common to say Islam and then radical Islam and extremist Islam when you could say it the other way. You could just say Islam and then watered down, whitewashed Walt Disney version of Islam.
Yep. But in any case, the mainstream are the people who preach jihad and carry out jihad. Those are not the radicals. The radicals are more like the guys who don't do this sort of thing. Here's another story where it identifies the people who did it as hardline Muslims, and I think that's perfectly reasonable to say that they're hardline, they're serious in their observance. The story comes out of eastern Uganda, where Robert Kasozi, an evangelist, was preaching, and he led a 75-year-old widow to faith in Christ. She was a Muslim woman and converted to Christianity. And a guy saw it, one of her relatives, as a matter of fact, and he came running out of his shop screaming, "Indeed, to Allah we belong, and to Him we shall return," and Allahu Akbar. And a group of Muslims gathered around, and they shouted at the evangelist, "You infidels, why do you come to spread a wrong message in this city? Don't you know this city belongs to Muslims? Stop what you're doing now, because for us, we know that Jesus is not the Son of God, but a messenger from Allah, just like our Prophet Muhammad." And then they started to beat him and stabbed him in the stomach and incidentally took his Bible and tore it into pieces, which is interesting because whenever somebody burns a Quran, we hear Muslims say, "Oh, you would never see a Muslim treat the Bible this way." But why did they stab him? Why didn't they say, "We will debate you," or "We'll discuss all this," or "Maybe you got a point"?
I don't know, Robert.
Could it be that Islam forbids conversion to other religions?
I have no idea. It's just a mystery. Everything you say is always such a mystery.
That's it, man. You just never know where this
No
is going to
explanation.
go. Yep. Meanwhile,
Totally unpredictable. Totally unpredictable.
indeed. Meanwhile, in Syria, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group that has taken power, they assured people they would respect everybody's rights, but it's not happening. What a surprise. And you can't really tell from this picture, but that is a broken window, and behind it is a broken statue that's been broken in half. That's the bottom part of the statue. And this was actually two shrines, Christian shrines in Damascus, that were vandalized by mobs screaming Allahu Akbar. And oddly enough, David, nobody came out and said, "Hey, we have to respect the people of the book." Okay.
Some things don't make any sense, Robert. I don't know what you're expecting here. The world is a weird place.
Indeed. Another weird situation comes out of Sudan, where there is a civil war going on, and there have been, David, this is really horrifying, 221 cases of child rape since the beginning of 2024, with an additional 77 cases of sexual assault against children. 4 one-year-olds were among those who survived the sexual assaults. So when we have Daniel Hakikaju there in a debate saying minor marriage is perfectly justified and good for everybody involved, this is the really ugly downside.
Yeah, you have guys who view little kids as sex objects.
Yes.
And we try to say, don't do that. That is bad. That is bad. And they say, no, this is part of our religion. And then it has real world consequences. And the weird part is, if we were actually successful in what we were doing, we would convince people that this is bad and that sex with children is bad. And yet we're the ones who try to convince people that sex with children is bad. And according to everyone, politicians, journalists, educators, everyone, we're the bad guys. And the good guys are the ones who are out there preaching it, defending sex with children and so on. And then you've got the real world consequences of that, which is people go around raping children. And somehow people understand, no, that's wrong, but we still condemn the guys who try to stop it, and we praise the guys who promote it. It's insane.
And another example of that insanity, David, this past week was the Oscars, where the usual lunacy went on, but this anti-Israel propaganda film, No Other Land, won the Oscar for the best documentary. And it says that the documentary is about the expulsion by the IDF of the West Bank community of Masafer Yatta, home to 20 ancient Palestinian villages. That's what the documentary is about. But the problem is there were not 20 ancient Palestinian villages there. All of the structures in the area were built after the 1980s and were built illegally on state lands where no Palestinian Arabs ever lived. In 1881, the British Palestine Exploration Fund made a map of that area and said there were traces of ruins in this area. There was no community, there were no people living there, no village, no population whatsoever. So in other words, this No Other Land documentary that won an Oscar is actually totally based on lies. The land was never populated by Palestinian Arabs. And yet
It's
it
weird.
became.
It's weird that Hollywood is controlled by Israel and they let this happen. It's weird.
Yes. And of course, the United States government is also controlled by Israel. And so it came out this week that USAID, the controversial aid organization that has been a target of the efforts by Donald Trump and Elon Musk to end government waste and fraud, it came to light that since the October 7th Jihad massacre of 1,200 Israelis, USAID sent over $2 billion to Gaza, which means to Hamas, since there's nobody else in Gaza that's going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So the United States government was actually funding the jihad against Israel as it was also aiding the Israelis, or actually withholding a lot of the weapons that the Israelis had bought. So this is a very strange situation, but it's really par for the course with all the stupid infidels and the stupid infidel activities that we have seen, even just that we've discussed over this hour.
Creepy stuff.
A couple of other things out of Germany. 2 Afghan Muslim migrants were given prison for a plot to carry out a jihad massacre at the Swedish parliament in Stockholm. And Ibrahim M.G. was given 5 years and 6 months in prison, and Ramin M. was given 4 years and 2 months. So after that, they're going to come out, they're going to be loyal, productive, stable citizens of German secular society. Am I right?
Yeah, that's a possibility. But more likely, you lock a bunch of guys up and they all work together and build an army for the future, or a terror cell, and radicalize a bunch of other people and so on. But who knows?
Out of Spain, we have an interesting story. Islamic Relief, which is a charity. It helps poor people, people who are in need. But it has been accused of links with jihad terror groups.
Well, at least we've never seen that before, Robert.
Now, why would Islamic charities be involved in terrorism, David?
Well, I mean, according to the Quran, that's one of the purposes of zakat and alms and so on, is collecting for the jihad. And therefore, it's always been part of giving alms that you're giving alms to fund jihad. And then, so you've got these charities and say, hey, we're charities. We're just here to help people and so on. Okay, cool. Let's all give money to these charities. They're an Islamic charity. It's part of their goal to fund jihad. And then everyone's shocked. Oh my goodness, this charity is funding jihad.
And so one of those organizations in the United States that ran into some trouble some years ago for funding an Islamic charity that was funding Hamas is the Council on American Islamic Relations. And they were in the news this week as well, because there is a former employee of CARE, Lori Soroya, who must be a convert to Islam, judging by her name. And she was suing the organization. She sued them for defamation after they accused her of embarking upon a defamation campaign against the organization because she was critical of it. But CARE just settled the suit out of court because the U.S. Magistrate Judge David Schultz ruled that the assets owned by the group were within the scope of permissible discovery. In other words, we're going to ask about your funding sources. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they did that, CARE says, oh, okay, we'll settle. You would almost think they don't want people to know their funding sources, David.
Mm-hmm.
But surely not. Surely everything's on the up and up with the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Definitely.
They actually were linked to, they were helping out the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, which was at one time the largest Islamic charity in the United States. They gave more than $12 million, Holy Land that is, gave more than $12 million to Hamas. and that money actually came from a lot of that money came from a website donations button that said "Give to the victims of 9/11," and you would click on it and give money, and they'd send it to Hamas.
Nice.
That was
Smart.
Holy Land Foundation. War is deceit, said Muhammad. Anyway, that's the jihad for now, and we got this new thing here, David. We got these super chats. I do have to tell you that I don't know how long this is going to last, or if it's going to even work at all. We got the super chats today, and if you got a minute, we'll go through them. But YouTube has been giving me the runaround about actually making this happen. I'm not sure it's going to keep happening. They're reviewing my website, which is, of course, jihadwatch.org, and connected to this show in that every story that we talk about here is at Jihad Watch. They're reviewing the website for hate. And so I'm fully expecting to get demonetized again, but hasn't quite happened yet. But meanwhile, when I try to fill out all the forms and get it all set up, I always keep running into snags. But meanwhile, we do have the super chats for today, so let's go. We got, let's see, we got Jack Ray here. Super chat for the Chatting Supers. Thank you, Jack. That's us, the Chatting Supers.
You could change the name of the show.
That's it.
This week in Jihad with the Chatting Supers.
And super chats be upon me. SCBUH. You can't even say paba. It's too. You can't say it. Too many consonants. And Jack again says, Ramadan, the ultra gamification of Islam, aka the month of trying to outwit Allah and assure your reward. Oh no, you're doing just what Allah wants. If you were waging jihad, just what he wants. Ida Rogozin says, David, are you okay after manure? Was hard to watch. What's that all about? I don't know.
Before I went live here, I was live on God Logic's channel, and we had like live call-ins with some Muslims, and yeah,
the guy's name was Manure.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
It's a very unfortunate name.
Yeah, it's not the greatest name. It's not the greatest name. Some names don't carry over well from one language to another. But yeah, he was trying to convince us that the position of the Quran is that the previous scriptures have been corrupted, and the entire thing was us quoting the Quran to him and him not caring.
Yeah, and, there's no case in the Quran for the idea that the earlier scriptures were corrupted. That's a made-up doctrine that is designed to paper over the contradiction between the Quran telling people it confirms the earlier scriptures and not actually doing so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyway. The entire show was showing how modern Islam has almost no connection with what the Quran actually says on some very important issues.
Indeed. We have Andrew Morgan saying, a merry, merry jihad and a boom, boom, new tear. God bless you and wish you a blessed clean week. Thank you. Clean week is the beginning of Lent for Orthodox Christians. Clean Monday. We don't have Ash Wednesday. We have Clean Monday, which is a total fast. That is nothing. Don't eat nothing. And that was this past Monday. We have Miriam with a super chat. Thank you, Miriam. We have... Oh, and a blessed clean week to you, Andrew Morgan, as well. And we have Tezbot says, I've been told no chance of UK becoming Islamic because population will never be large enough. All white supremacist conspiracy. Thoughts? Yeah, sure, I got thoughts. That's stupid. You just look at the rate of the growth of the Muslim community versus the rate of the growth of the native community, and it's very clear you're going to have a Muslim majority there probably before the end of this century.
Yeah, everything is math. If you have two groups and one's smaller than the other group, but the smaller group has significantly higher birth rates, and you keep bringing in more people from that other group, it's kind of a matter of time. Now, what you could say is that there's all kinds of time for things to change, for something to change. That's true, but at the rates that are going on now, it's simply a matter of time. It's a matter of time before you're outnumbered. But that's just one issue. The other issue is Islam does not need to outnumber you to control you. I mean, just look, you have a small percentage of the population of the UK. Look at how they control you. Look at what they do. That's what they do with a small percentage. What do you think happens when they're still in the minority, but that population doubles? You've already seen when they're a couple percent of the population, they can get away with gang raping tens of thousands of young girls, and no one will say a word because they're all scared of these guys.
And so imagine
So,
what it'll be like in another 10 years.
yep. Oh, somehow magically going to get better. Yeah.
Jack Ray says, no, don't let Muhammad touch the cat.
Yeah. Keep
Oh,
Muhammad away from cats.
okay. And we have Rob Reed. Loved you in the Brady Bunch, Rob. Can we be sure that moon is not an explosive?
I think it was from that NYPD picture where they had a moon in there.
Ah, yes. Well, you never know. Something's going to come down on the NYPD because of that. They're gonna regret it. That is not a threat, ladies and gentlemen. That's an observation. The problem will not come from me, but from their friends who they're celebrating Ramadan with. Knows too much says the debate between you two was epic and hilarious. I agree with Robert that Muhammad is a title. It's likely based on that of the prophet Daniel. Example Daniel 10:11, who had revelations from Gabriel. Well, thank you, knows too much. David will likely disagree.
I will.
We'll have to do it again.
And we shall.
Knows too much also. Yes?
Whenever we can't find a Muslim debater or Muslims make someone else back down, we'll do our classic debate over again, Robert.
Yeah, any Muslim wants to debate on did Muhammad exist? I'm there. You know, I am not interested in these stupid debates with these liars where you have to unpack. You have time to unpack 5 of their lies, but they told 15 and that kind of nonsense. But with the did Muhammad exist question, they just don't know enough about it. There's no way they can deal with it. I'm happy to discuss it. Call me up, Hickikaju or whoever. Anyway. Knows too much also says, also many historical issues with Mecca. That's right. But a PDF file, 7th century caravan robber who was stories might still be historical. They might be historical. Some of these stories might be historical. That doesn't necessarily mean they have anything to do with Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. It could be that there are historical stories about various warlords, various prophets, various people of eminence, and they were all folded into the Muhammad myth. All right, we have Eurasian 65. Hello, this is my first super chat. 2 for amazing men. Yeah, it's my second super chat, and like I said, I don't know how long this is going to last, but we'll see. Robert, please keep up the good work. Thank you. P.S. Love you too, David. Who doesn't love David Wood, ladies and gentlemen?
Everyone loves the dizzle.
Everybody loves the dizzle. Okay, Vishnu says, heard fasting was copied from pagans, like many things. Yeah, well, you know, the Christians fast, the Jews fast, the pagans fast, so it could have been from any number or all 3. Ratboyd, rest to the 27 NYPD under the WTC. Shame on them, indeed. Well put. And then we have Misha SWB. If I Rama fast from Ezra-isms, I would still be able to share the Streamly Ezra diet after sundown. But if I Lent fast from Ezra-ism, Ezra would be disappointed. I'm no longer spreading corruption. What?
There's an ongoing series of comments that are all mocking the idea of Jews worshiping Ezra and so on in the Muslim sources, and so there's the idea is there's this cult of Ezra out there.
Yeah, it's somewhere out there. They'll find it one day.
Mm-hmm.
For a cup of Tim Hortons maple syrup coffee, as Robert Spencer makes a Chicago accent. Yeah, you know, it took me a long time to get into it. You know, I forget because I haven't been out there in so long. Okay, Songs of Relief says that Imam said we have jealousy. Oh yeah, the toilet paper thing. Yes, we are so jealous of the Muslims. You see? Knows too much. Robert, how can someone contact you to set up an interview on the topic of jihad? I know someone with a decent-sized channel, not me, that is interested. Director@jihadwatch.org. Director@jihadwatch.org is my email address. Tina L. On my way to services. Please look at POTUS tweet to Hamas today. Want your thoughts.
That was
also,
a doozy.
Do you guys need any volunteers? I'm great with computers. Yeah, I probably need a moderator, but email me at director@jihadwatch.org. And did you go to pre-sanctified services? I'm sorry I missed it. But, well, that's a long story. Can't drive at night. Romology, did you see the story about the Nando's waitress? How got assaulted in the UK by a Muslim man and his wife? That was a while ago, wasn't it? The
Yeah,
video's out
I don't know
there.
if this is the same one, but yeah, I remember he like threw something in her face or something like that.
Yeah, and then they didn't do anything. But I saw in passing he was finally arrested. Didn't have any details, so I didn't bring it here. Songs of Relief offers a prayer. Lord Jesus, please bless Robert and David and family abundantly. Love a long time, guys, and be well. Thank you, and all to you as well. Use Your Delusion says, patiently waiting for Robert's poetry anthology, and that's just another delusion. And then we have Odd Duck 97, daily reminder that Momo was a chomo. What's a chomo, David? I'm an old guy.
That stands for child molester, chomo.
Ah, yeah, well, that's true enough.
Momo the chomo.
Kurt Hanneman, yeah, says, Robert, would you please remind England that you are banned? They're claiming free speech over there. Well, I don't know that they need a reminder. You know, they're probably not thinking about me. And I tell you, the less the British government thinks about me, the better. Eileen Sloan says, thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do, Eileen Sloan. And Mary Jo says, what do you think about President Trump's message to Hamas? AP's talking about it live. Well, by all means, AP no doubt has a great many wise things to say about it. I think that what's important about it is that it's like the third big threat he's issued against them. And the more you issue threats and don't follow through, the weaker you look. Eunuch Petsus.
Hey,
Yep.
1 second. Let me just read the message for everybody.
Yeah.
So in case anyone didn't see it, but it comes from President Donald J. Trump. Said, Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. Signed, President Donald J. Trump. And that is as about a brutal message as you can possibly give.
If he's going to say that, he's got to follow through. That's all I'm saying.
You'd have to, or they would never take your threat seriously again.
Indeed.
Whereas if he actually goes through with that, then future jihadis of the world will all understand when he says something, you better believe it.
It's all to the good. Eunuch Petsu says, logic will cease because it's the religion of peace. You're right, EP. And Dodge Mitch says, thanks, guys. And thank you, Dodge Mitch. And Ask Yeshka. What's a Yeshka? Shalom. Are you having Ramadan noodles when your fast turns to feast? When it gets dark? L'chaim. Well, I don't know about that. But in any case, thank you very much, all of you. I'm not sure that's going to work, like I say, but I'll keep you posted. And in the meantime, we'll be back with more jihad as soon as we are able and as soon as there's more jihad. And until then, pray, hope, and don't worry.